Despite some union backlash, last week's announcement of a new round of tax cuts from January was well received by most, Eric Ristrom among them. He told today's luncheon meeting of the Newcastle Businessmen's Club it was a responsible attack on inflation and far preferable to wage rises. But at the same time, he says it's increased the risk factor for wage earners, who, despite following all the guidelines, could still end up breaking the law.
I just want to warn people that if they have a second job, and even if they play the game, right to the letter, and say to that second employer, I don't want to claim what we call the general exemption, if they do everything right, they can still be anything from $3, typically $19, up to $15 a week short on their instalments.
What can they do?
Well, the best thing, I might say have more tax deducted, but clearly the best thing is to go to the post office when the new schedules are out, find out the tax that's being deducted from each of your jobs now, add the job money together and find what you would have taken if it were all from one job. Now you'll find a difference, anything from $3 to $19 typically, and put that money in the bank and don't spend it because you're going to need it.
Part of the problem, according to Mr Ristrom, is that taxpayers are intimidated by the tax laws, and he blames much of it on the presentation of the guidelines they must follow, which he insists are far too lengthy and complicated.
I wrote that whole thing in 21 words, and then had another version that took only 15 words.
Nor did Mr Ristrom bother wasting much breath when it came to the question of more tax cuts in the future.
No, not until another election, because that's the way the cookie crumbles.
With expenditures totalling $85 million, the town clerk originally proposed a deficit of $692,000, but that blew out to almost $1 million when council decided to maintain the pensioner rebate. According to Alderman Tate, the deficit is the largest ever set by council, and he is critical of the move considering the current economic climate.
There is difficult economic times ahead, I think that's generally known, and I can't see why an organisation like the council should be budgeting for an inordinate deficit of that magnitude. It's just more than what we should be looking at.
The Lord Mayor, however, believes the budget is sensible, with costs cut to the bone.
I think the economic situation we've got at the present time is we need total responsibility in budgeting, and that's what we've got in this document. It's extremely well done, and what they're talking about is a minor deficit. 1/85th of our budget is in deficit.
Although these children from Wirianda School at Madawi may be a long way from the tension in the Middle East, they still realise the importance of what is happening. This Christmas, the Australian hostages won't be forgotten. These children have made sure of that. With the help of the Department of Foreign Affairs, each Aussie in the Gulf will receive a Christmas card, each with its own special message inside from the children, a message which the school wishes to everyone.
The cream of the Hunters High School athletes gathered at Newcastle University today to receive recognition for some outstanding achievements. To win a sporting blue is to be considered the best of the best.
First of all, the students must be chosen in regional representative teams. compete in regional carnivals and usually have to achieve state or national representation.
15 students were deemed worthy of a blue, while a further 14 were considered to have the potential for either a special mention or a general sports award. The list of achievements was dazzling, but the star of the day was dual winner Sean Rosa of Whitebridge High, who was nominated the Outstanding Sportsman of the Year by the Blues Committee.
Compared to everyone else in the room, I just feel privileged.
The MSB Hunter Ports Authority's quarterly presentation to local businesses reflected the economy. In general, the port's operations were below target. Port Authority Chairman Bruce Thompson said the city's preeminence as a coal port would continue well into the next century, but he stressed the need for the authority to find more diverse operations. This appears to be happening with encouraging results. Last month, Australian Cement announced a plan to build a $14.5 million silo at Kooragang, and today Hunter Port Authority manager Jeff Connell revealed an approach by the Toyota car company to site its major import terminal in Newcastle.
We identified the opportunity to make a single port call for car carriers into Australia some time ago. We've been progressing that concept with Toyota and also with some other motor vehicle importers.
The authority prepared a detailed submission in June, even allocating an offloading area at the State Dockyard site, now earmarked as the authority's new headquarters. The submission included an air pollution study, which showed that vehicles parked on the docks would suffer no worse exposure than in Sydney. The official comment from Toyota's headquarters in Sydney is no comment. However, we understand that management is already discussing the logistics of the proposal, pending final approval by headquarters in Japan. Even at this stage, Newcastle is in with a chance against some very strong competition. But if Newcastle isn't successful, the Hunter Ports Authority believes it will have benefited just by being in the running.
The decision to sell off all 10 of Elcom and Newcom's mines, 8 of which are around Lake Macquarie and North Wyong, is no real surprise. Earlier this month, Premier Nick Greiner gave the Electricity Commission until the end of the year to restructure, saying the government had no business to be in coal mining. Liddell State Coal Mine in the Upper Hunter was already on the market. Now Awabba, New Vale, New Vale 2, Newstan, Wai'i, Munmora, Myuna and Kurrumbong mines will also be sold, raising about $150 million.
We believe that as a result of the processes, there are likely to be savings of the order of $50 million per annum to the Electricity Commission, which will of course ultimately flow on to benefit the people of New South Wales.
But the news has left miners' unions fuming.
Absolutely shocked and horrified. The cold and callous manner that the Electricity Commission went about it has been very concerning to us.
Mine workers statewide will stage a 24-hour stop work meeting next Tuesday and are questioning the government's legal right to sell off taxpayer-owned assets.
We don't believe the government has a right to sell off anything without having a mandate to do so from the public.
The decision to sell follows open tendering to supply coal to power stations. 6 local mines will be sold with contracts up to 10 years, but Awabba and New Vale failed to win contracts. These mines may prove impossible to sell, according to Mr Brown. Redundancy packages are now being negotiated. Rebecca Skinner, NBN News.
Many tournament players with overseas experience are taking part in the 3-day event, and in the men's singles first round, all the seeds progressed. Number 1 seed Laurie Warder from Sydney was in devastating form as he swept aside Newcastle's Robert Cole in straight sets 6-1, 6-3. Warder used his international training to the fullest and never let Cole into the match. In the ladies' singles, a similar situation to the men, with all the seeded players winning through to round 2. Alicia Thornton, the number 4 seed from Sydney, was too good for Anne Hamilton of Port Stephens. Even though the former Newcastle champion played top tennis, Thornton was a bit too strong and won in straight sets 6-4, 6-4. At the Bennett's Green 10-pin bowling centre last night, 19-year-old Robert Thompson confirmed his premiership win in the $11,000 Invitational Singles Championship when he won a bonus sudden death playoff. Thompson played Chris Ward in the final and the crowd was on the edge of their seats as the two exchanged strikes. It was obvious that the first to miss would dip out and Ward succumbed to the pressure of Thompson's hot streak. The final analysis, Thompson 222 defeated Ward 213. It was to be a night of celebration and top racing as Kilowan Bay star Todd Wilshire made his return to the Motordrome after finishing third at the World Solo Championships a couple of months ago. And the crowd were awestruck as they watched the undeniable skills of the whiz on wheels. Then they were dumbstruck when the bike section was called off when the riders protested the state of the track after 9 heats, a couple of which got right out of hand. Today, officials were hard at work in between the rain squalls, preparing a new surface for a full assessment and practice session on Wednesday evening, in preparation for the Russia versus New South Wales solo meeting on Saturday night. Promotions manager Peter Gerbiel said today that the midweek deadline for the track to be ready is to ensure that all criteria is met to provide first-class racing and to ensure that the circuit will hold up under full racing conditions. On their Australian tour so far, the Russians have made a clean sweep of the Northern Territory and Queensland, unbeaten in all 8 clashes.
We weren't providing a good enough service to the public in Newcastle. They will enable us to meet our objectives of breaking even financially and operating as a commercial basis without dependence on government contract payments as we move into the next financial year. But also, they will enable us to generate a lot of additional revenue by offering travel patterns to the people of Newcastle who currently are forced to perhaps use other means of transport.
Frank Gardner enjoys nothing more than a scenic drive, but today he had a sight worth capturing in his own garage. A 40-centimetre blue-tongue lizard had managed to get itself stuck in the rear coil spring suspension of Frank's car. How it got in there was one question, but how to get it out was another.
And as you can see, I've just about had to dismantle the back end of the car to get him out. I didn't want to kill him.
Off came the wheel, the shock absorber, and finally the spring assembly. The lizard came out with a gentle tug. Not looking too worse for wear after 140 kilometres at speeds at up to 80 kilometres an hour, the blue tongue gave its characteristic salute. After living life in the fast lane, it needed a little prompting to return to the garden.
With an operating loss of $9 million in 1988 and the state government being forced to come up with a $6 million aid package last year, management at Newcastle Buses knew it was time for change.
We weren't providing a good enough service to the public in Newcastle.
So in Newcastle today, details of the new travel network were unveiled. Dominated chiefly by the merging of routes, the changes were 18 months in the planning, the result of surveys and discussions with community groups and patrons.
The route system is a lot simpler. The same routes will apply on weekdays and Saturdays. and the same routes will apply on night times and Sundays. So people will not have as much difficulty trying to work out where buses go at different times of the week. They'll also get a lot more destinations through their suburbs. All suburbs will be linked generally to 4 destinations. They'll all get a link to their local shopping centre, and all shopping centres will have direct links one to the other.
The changes will take effect in 2 weeks' time. New timetables are being distributed, but Len Reagan, General Manager at Newcastle Buses, admits confusion is still likely and that questions too are expected to be raised over the move to axe some services completely.
In no case where the service is reduced will the number of people affected per bus get above 4 or 5 on an average. Where there are particular cases of disadvantage, we're prepared to talk to the individuals about that and see if there's some local arrangements we can come to.
And to match the new network, the launch of a new high-tech bus being trialled in the city at present. If successful, it and many like it will be brought in early next year. And in the same sleek mould, the arrival of new uniforms for the drivers. But while Newcastle Buses insist the future looks bright, some are still sceptical. Among them, Newcastle Police. They're known to be concerned the loss of some early morning services from the city on Friday and Saturdays. They say they're fearful stranded night owls may now wind up in trouble.
Police allege Lyle sexually assaulted a 33-year-old woman who was walking alone down a Mayfield street just after 10 o'clock last night. The court heard that the defendant dragged the victim to a vacant block, punched her around the face and gagged her with his T-shirt. It's alleged he commenced to have sexual intercourse without consent, but was disturbed by police. The court heard that a constable handcuffed the defendant after a violent struggle, but Lau broke free and was chased for more than 300 metres before he was finally taken into custody. The police prosecutor said the defendant had admitted to having sex with a girl, but alleged it was a set-up. Counsel for the defence told the court she had difficulty in obtaining instructions from her client because of a language barrier, but said he pleaded not guilty to the charges. Magistrate Col Elliott refused the defendant's application for bail and remanded the matter until December 12. He agreed to a defence request for a Samoan interpreter to be present at that court appearance. Leslie Robinson, NBN News.
He's the lone salvo on the beat around the city's night spots, the wharves, haunts and squats of the homeless. He's a helping hand to the down and out and spearheads the Salvation Army's crisis and emergency relief work. Stan Hindle has carried the Red Shield for 22 years, the past 8 of those in Newcastle. He's worked especially hard on alleviating the problems and dangers faced by homeless young people.
I think we've been able to enjoy the satisfaction of getting amongst the young people on the streets and the homelessness in the city, providing a SOS crisis centre which has covered the feeding of the homeless children and up to the quake the accommodation of them as well.
There are the problems of drug and alcohol abuse that don't go away and can only be kept in check at ground level.
There's still far too many young people consuming alcohol and other drugs, which is a real concern to me and I know to many others in the community.
The earthquake added a weight to the Salvation Army's shoulders and Stan joined the fight of a city overcoming another crisis.
Things that he's done for people around this city are absolutely outstanding, even in the Salvation Army. He'll be sorely missed, but I certainly wish him well.
Stan and his wife Connie, also a Salvation Army officer, will take up their new posting at Southport on the Gold Coast in mid-January. Stan's work in Newcastle will be carried on by a replacement from Sydney.
Suicide shoppers are the latest buzzwords in credit counselling circles. Now that we're officially in a recession, welfare agencies fear consumers will embark on one last spending binge before Christmas, with little regard for the consequences.
The thing that says, I don't care, I'll have this now and I don't care what happens afterwards.
Lifeline sees a stream of people who've fallen foul of easy credit. As the festive season approaches, they're still paying off debts accumulated last Christmas.
Well, my husband had the promise of a job shortly after Christmas, and on the basis of that we spent up so heavily using a card at one store, and we booked up bikes, clothes. We thought, great, he'll be started in his new job and we'll be able to pay. The job fell through.
The Credit Society says if you love people, you spend money on them, and the more money you spend on them, the more you love them.
Statistics revealed that Australians owe $23 billion in consumer debt. That's more than $2,000 for every adult. Lifeline has launched a statewide campaign in the pre-Christmas period to alert consumers to the dangers of overcommitment. They warn that personal debt can bring bitter battles as families struggle to make do with limited resources.
Is that what you're saying?
Just stop it! Stop that argument!
Credit costs you. So think twice, or pay the price.
Credit counsellors like Hilary Daly grimly accept they'll have no shortage of customers once the Christmas euphoria evaporates. Still, their pre-Christmas message is simple.
Check what you're putting on your credit cards. Discuss Christmas before the glamour of the season overcomes you, and make a family plan for what you can realistically afford and what you can't.
The cars collided head-on on a straight, well-sealed stretch of Freeman's Waterhole Drive just before 11 a.m. The driver of the southbound sedan was killed instantly, his vehicle coming to rest down an embankment dozens of metres from the point of impact. The other vehicle, a Datsun sedan, was carrying two youths, both from Cessnock. The passenger escaped with bruising. The driver was trapped by the legs for about 50 minutes. Ambulance paramedics flew to the scene aboard the Westpac NBN rescue helicopter, providing treatment for the trapped 18-year-old, while rescue crews from Cessnock struggled to free him. The youth was freed just before midday and airlifted to Royal Newcastle Hospital, where he was admitted with multiple leg fractures. His condition this evening is described as stable. Police have contacted the relatives of the dead man. They say he is a 65-year-old from Sydney. His name isn't expected to be released until tomorrow. Meanwhile, accident investigation police are still trying to establish the cause of the smash on the busy Mulbring bypass, which now carries all north-south traffic from the F3 freeway. They believe several motorists may have witnessed the accident but have not yet come forward. In the meantime, they are still waiting to interview the driver. Tom Hilston, NBN News.
Unemployment can sometimes be a vicious cycle. The longer someone is out of a job, the more difficult it becomes to re-enter the workforce and gain skills that might increase employment opportunities.
That's a problem these days because everybody wants experienced people, and if you can't do these courses, you've got nothing, unfortunately.
The forklift driver's course run by Skillshare is designed to equip people with a concrete qualification. After 5 weeks, they are fully licensed drivers. But it's not only qualifications that hold people back. Unemployment can also batter confidence.
A lot of them, as I said before, their confidence seems to fade and self-esteem goes down and things like that. So, yeah, that's the one thing that we're looking to training people to bring their confidence back up.
The course includes a job search skills lesson to teach people how to approach potential employers. They will also spend 1 week in the workplace, putting their new skills into practice.
Work experience does also enable the trainee to go into the workforce and gainfully be employed, be it part-time or full-time.
Skillshare will soon be running other courses, ranging from store person's training to taxi driving, all designed for the long-term unemployed.